I was very emotionally immature. And, my husband understood that, but he was patient with me and he allowed me to grow in certain areas. And I was also open to wanting to grow to receive that information. So again, if you know that you're emotionally immature and you're also closed, it just won't work.
Welcome back to Before You Do with Verlin. I'm your host and auntie you didn't know you needed. And today we have Viair Myles back in the studio, and we're going to pick up where we left off. And we're discussing the preparation and the upkeep of being a wife. All right, let's get into it. Viair, how do ladies prepare to be wives in terms of the body and health?
Oof, this is such a good topic. So, one of the things that I would highly recommend that every lady listening that they do is focus on yourself first. So, what I mean by this is, how does your skin look? How is your body currently? Are you moving? Are you stretching? Are you getting your mindset right? Are you in therapy if you need therapy? What does your spiritual walk look like? All of these are muscles that are going to help build. Once you build these muscles, these are the things that are actually going to help prepare you when it is time to be a wife, because you're not just solely focusing on you. You now have another spirit, soul being that you're connected with and you all are becoming one. But in order for that to happen, you want to make sure that some of maybe the bad habits or the bad traits that you've carried over because you weren't really thinking about it or you just decided to let yourself go, that you are making sure that these are now important to you because they're also going to be important to your husband. And if you're not taking care of yourself, how can he rely on you to not just take care of his needs, but also take care of the children's needs if you all decide to have children?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's good to, like you said, get in these habits now so it won't be another additional rather transition, because it's going to be enough to transition just building a life with someone. But if you have to go back and do extra, just save yourself some time, right? Okay, how do we prepare in terms of energy and habits to be a wife?
Yes, this is a really great one. So I would say the biggest thing that I did just within my journey that I highly recommend is on having a really good support system. So if that means that you need to snip some people in your life, if that means that you need to audit, relationships that you currently have that are not helping you reach that goal, I highly recommend that you do that, that you audit those relationships, that you are able to really understand, okay, if this is the route that I actually want to go, am I around people that are going to help be my covering as I'm entering that season of my life? And this is an important one because sometimes it may be family members that you have to let go. Maybe you are came from a divorced household and maybe you grew up with a single mom and you are now creating some of these traits that your mom had from, her divorce, and you're going into your marriage or the marriage that you want where you have maybe this independent mindset and you're trying to figure out, wow, how did these habits come about and why am I so agreeable to do these things and reluctant to do the things that my husband is asking me to do? Again, you may not know what these are, which is why it's important to go to therapy. I think that's really important as a first step to actually get an idea of what those habits are that you currently have so you can use those tools to help you break them. Another thing that I would say that's going to be really important aside from the community and being able to make sure that you have those resources in place, but also taking an audit of just where you are in every area of your life. Where you are you with your finances. Men don't know, they don't necessarily care about how much money you have, but if you don't have enough money to take care of yourself, that's a red flag. So it's going to be important for you to at least address those concerns. Okay, if I need to make sure that, You don't need to do this doesn't need to cost a lot of money or be super expensive, but how much do I need to budget to make sure that my hair looks nice? How much do I need to budget to make sure that my skin looks nice, that I'm, eating quality foods, that I am, whether it's stretching or walking or doing some type of cardio or whatever it is to just make sure that your fitness is there. Maybe you need to get an accountability partner in these areas to help you with that as well. These are the things that are going to help you long term as you are transitioning into wifehood. This is like these are the things that are going to be really important too, because if you don't have the tools and the resources and you're also not looking to apply them or auditing your life to see what you need to get rid of or replace, and then what you also need to add, that can potentially be a red flag as well, because these are the things that, again, he's going to be looking at you for. And if he can't rely on you to do these things in your singleness, how can he rely on you to do the things that come next when you are actually married?
That's a good point. One of the things that conversations I've been having and things I've been hearing, you were talking in the beginning about your friends or your circle, your support unit. And again, as you prepare to be married, one of the things that I always say is if you are looking to be a wife and you are looking to be married, even before that happens, you need to surround yourself with women that are positive, that have positive outlooks, that are married or rather happily married, or at least striving towards that. Because if you surround yourself with, I call them man hating women, women who, men are all this and they have all these opinions and they may be unhealed. You may have a friend or friends who are divorced and not healed or just coming out of a bad relationship and they are still in that grieving process or they're still in that mindset that this happened to me and all men are awful. And no, you shouldn't get married. It's not going to work. All men cheat, all of these things. And so if you surround yourself, even before you're thinking about getting married, but not before you're thinking, if you surround yourself with the men hating club, right? You're going to get these ideas in your mind, even the idea there aren't any more good men. There aren't any men. There are not enough. All of these things that you hear, right? If you, as you say, if this is your support circle, you can forget it. Like you're not even going to be in the right headspace or have the right energy to enter into a relationship and definitely not be married. So it is important that you do these things. And that's why we're talking about preparation, right? And how to get yourself in a position to be found and to engage as a whole happy woman. All right, Viair, tell us about yourself, please.
Yes, absolutely. So again, my name is Viair. Oof. Let me think. What are some fun things that you should know a little bit about me? So I actually have a podcast that I created a few years ago called the Holistic Sister Circle. It was actually birthed from my pregnancy. I had a miscarriage at that time, and I myself was looking for, again, a support system, people that I could, mainly women that I could really connect with that maybe have gone through that, how they were able to navigate through that. There were certain conversations at that time that I just didn't really know how to communicate with my husband, and I didn't want him or me to feel frustrated because I couldn't really communicate what I needed or what I was looking for. So I decided to start a podcast and start talking to different health experts about just some of the things that women may go through. And through that process, I learned how to really remedy a lot of different illnesses from my own home. So we do have my stepdaughter, one of them actually, she has a sickle cell. So we were able to just learn a little bit more about that process and how we could heal her. My husband also has sickle cell as well. So, what that looks like to heal him. And then I grew up, aside from the miscarriage, with irritable bowel syndrome. So that was really big for me too. So as you can see, majority of my life, I had been leading up to this point, learning more about my own body and what it needed in order to really survive and thrive. And I learned that through that entire process, I wasn't just focusing on remedying my own issues within my own health, but now being able to carry those needs forward in the community as well. Because anytime there's any issue within the household, everyone from a health perspective, everyone comes to me at this point, and now I also have a community of health experts, leaders, and coaches that I can always connect with and ask questions. We just literally, a couple days ago, my youngest stepdaughter, she started using these like Five Below skincare products, which is, anyway, she loves Five Below. So she went there and she started getting all these different skincare products and she has this entire system. And then a few days later, she started having these rashes on her face. And I was like, okay, you need to throw those away for one. And then for two, we need to figure out how we can heal this within just a few days because she's actually getting ready to go on a trip. So, I was able to call again someone up in our community and say, hey, this is a situation. What would you recommend? And because I have an esthetician, because I have fertility coaches and holistic practitioners in my community, in my ecosystem, I can just, whip up a quick call or a text message and they can give me a remedy very quickly. Again, I highly recommend this, and this is why I'm so passionate about this work. Aside from that, I also have a community called Podcast Playground for Female Entrepreneurs, where there's anyone that is looking to create their own podcast or start their own, or just really focusing on their voice and getting their message out there, being able to help you launch, build, and monetize from your show. So again, some of the things that I really enjoy, and that's what I'm about today.
All right. And I appreciate you being here, taking this time out to share your wealth of wisdom. And you're talking about food and diet. That's going to segue into the next question, which is from your experience, especially, how does food play a role in being a good wife? And I just want to say this because times are very different from when I was coming up. And these days you hear lots of women say they don't cook. I don't have time to cook and they don't like to cook and all that. And I mean, I get it, but there are some things that men still like I'm teaching my teenage sons. Well, I can't say that. My husband taught my teenage sons how to cook. So they are very capable of cooking. They've been cooking for years now. And they will never be like, oh, I can't cook for myself. However, I do know, just like my husband knows how to cook, he still appreciates me cooking. He still appreciates a homemade meal. So, ladies, we're going to talk about the role that food plays in being a good wife, at least for some men. I'm not speaking for all, right? But for most, a lot of men. All right. All right.
This is huge. And okay, disclaimer, I am not perfect. All right. When I was growing up, I actually hated being in the kitchen. Okay. I remember when I was young, my mom, she was always in the kitchen. Actually, both of my parents knew how to cook. My dad was a chef in the military and he taught my mom how to cook, this again prior to the divorce because they were together for about 10 years. And I was able to kind of dabble between both of them as far as who both of them cooked in the home. And then fast forward to my parents' divorce, we were with my mom full time, majority of the time. And she would be in the kitchen, she would cook. And at that time, she would always say, do y'all want to learn? And I would say, no, not really. And until I could not say that anymore. And that was when I graduated college and I moved across the country to Seattle at the time. I'm from Maryland, but I moved to Seattle, Washington after graduating college, and I had my own apartment and I was on my own. And I had to learn how to cook because that was the only way that I could feed myself at the time. So I started, learning some different tricks, and actually started with, I think it was like Blue Apron or something like that at the time. One of those meal kit delivery services where they bring the groceries to you and they also bring you a menu and you can play around with that to figure out, what you're cooking for dinner. So I did that for a little while and that was my start into cooking. And then anytime I had maybe a Christmas party for work or some type of work function where we all had to bring something, I would call my mom and say, "Mom, like, how did you make X, Y, and Z? I want to make that." I would have her on FaceTime. So again, I use my resources when I needed to. So if you're someone who maybe you're not cooking right now and you really despise cooking, like I get it because I was there. And what I realized though is, Verlin, just to your point, like men love home cooked meals. And I didn't really understand the value of cooking until I started dating my husband because at that time he was a little bit more far off than I was. He doesn't cook at all. And when we reconnected, at this time he loved Trader Joe's and that was his thing. So he would go to Trader Joe's, he would get all these box meals. And I'm like, you can't just keep eating these box meals every week, with, especially when you got two girls, like you're going to have to do something different. So I would take that, like I took initiative and I say, why don't we start learning how to do some different things? So I would look on Pinterest at different recipes and I would get like the girls involved and I would say, maybe we can make this for a dessert or maybe we can make this for dinner. And it just became something that we just did and it integrated very nicely into our lives and we made it fun. And I think the biggest thing here is when you think of it as a chore and you think of it as something that you have to do, obviously nobody wants to have to do anything. But if you can get into change your perspective on the reason for a good home cooked meal, because to be honest with you, within your home, naturally, most women are the healers of the home. And how can you nurture a loving environment if you can't get down the one thing that everyone in the house needs in order to survive? That's a big role and a big responsibility. And I think for me, once I started understanding that and from really, again, me not really cooking at all to him having those box meals to us being able to kind of integrate fun ways to cook with each other, it really opened up my channels and, for me to say, oh, okay, this is a little bit bigger than what I thought it was. And then for them, it really opened up another layer of just experiences that they've never or events that they would have never had. So it allowed us to have more of a closeness with each other. It allowed us to relate to each other in a different way. And then more as they started feeling a little bit more open and comfortable with me, it got to the point where it was like, hey, I don't need to just eat to survive, but I'm actually having an issue. And that's where it was able to get even deeper for me because I do understand that majority of the illnesses that we have start with our food. And once I understood that concept, that's really when I started taking food a lot more seriously. Again, I had my own, elements that I had to really figure out within myself too. And the two biggest connections with that are going to be what makes you feel that that when you don't feel good about yourself, it's either because of what you ate or what you're holding in emotionally. And those two things correlate. So sometimes, and I didn't know this at first, but when you're angry and you go, or you're stressed and you go for those bag of chips, you're not going for the bag of chips just to eat chips. You're going for the crunch sensation to relieve your stress. And when I understood the correlation between food and emotions, that's when I said, okay, this is something that I actually need to learn more about and really take it seriously. And then from there, it got to a point where I was just fascinated with it and I wanted to study it and I wanted to learn more. And again, I took the liberty to be able to do that. And I felt like it was a gift because no one else in the house could uphold that standard aside from me. And that's why I say it's so important, again, as a woman, that you really understand how your body works. You understand how, your spouse body works, what they like, what they don't like, how they feel when they eat certain things. If you're planning to have children, or maybe you already have children, why your children may be acting out. Maybe they're not, they're acting out and you just want to give them ice cream. But in reality, it may be something a little bit deeper. And because you're not really understanding, okay, what did you feed them throughout this week? What type of emotional relation do they have toward food? I remember when the girls there was a time where we would have snacks in the house all the time. And we were trying to figure out, why are they so angry all the time, acting out and just emotional when it comes to not having these snacks. And they were addicted to them. So now, I mean, we rarely have snacks in the house. And when we do, have a snack, we have the girls make the snacks themselves. So every week, again, part of kind of their thing that they enjoy, their experience, is they get to cook and make their own food, and they love doing that and they love sharing it with their friends. So anyway, I share all that to say that it's very important that you do realize that food is not just a thing that you have to do, but it is a thing that's going to help not just you and also your family live a long life. And you are the center of what that looks like, just based on those two things: the food they eat and how they feel after they eat it.
Okay, I guess we can end that. We can end this right now. Gosh, when you said about the crunch, I remember reading about that. And as I was this happened years ago when I first heard it, and I remember I was going to look for the chips, and I remember thinking back, I just read about this, that, stress, and I'm like, "Yep," and that's how I was feeling. I wanted to release that stress, and you're right, that crunching, and let me tell you, it's always chips in this house for that reason, and I'm not saying I'm not wearing that as a badge of honor, but it's not as bad as it used to be. Like, at any given time, we had 5, 6 big family size chips, and I probably was the one eating them the most, dealing with these teenagers. So, yeah, and, like, the soothing of ice cream. I haven't had ice cream in a while, but I used to eat a lot of coffee ice cream, and it was something soothing about that when I felt bad about something, just feeling that smooth ice cream. So it's like, yeah, I absolutely agree how emotions come into play and it dictates what you want to eat or what you crave. So, yeah, that's a lot.
That's true, and I mean, like, even right now, I have a cookie right here, right? So and I share that because it's nobody is perfect. Like, we're still going to do the thing, but it's about progress. Like, are you better today than you were yesterday? Even if it's just by 1%, like, that's okay, that's enough. And I learned at this point, okay, if I like snacks, can I find a healthier option? Again, I have this cookie, but the brand of the cookie, it's a healthier option than me eating a Chip Ahoy or something like that. And I'm okay with that. And I think that it's important for, again, those who are listening, that you're okay with that too. It's okay to, maybe you were, I don't know, maybe you love cookies too, and there was a time where you were eating a ton of Oreos, but maybe you went from the thick Oreos to the thin ones. And then maybe you went from the thin Oreos to just a completely different brand that dedicated more to natural products or holistic living. Maybe it doesn't taste the same as an Oreo, but again, it's progress. So I want to share that too, that I'm not saying by any means that you have to be perfect and you have to have it all figured out and you have to have it all together, but every little bit helps and it counts toward the bigger vision and the bigger goal that you have.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go back to this, the concept of keeping yourself up as a wife, right? How does that play out and why is that important, especially during these times when things are a little more aggressive and you got the internet and all of this stuff we didn't have decades ago?
Yeah, so this is such a great topic because, I was on a call, and again, I even though I say, like, it's important to surround yourself with couples and, community and people who, again, who are married, who are happily married, who can help guide you and answer any questions that you have. But it doesn't mean that you just exile all of your single friends, right? There may be a time where, now if they're negative about certain things, that's a little bit different. But I do have, I still have single friends. I have married friends as well. And with my single friends, one of the things that we talk about a lot, because they're in the process of, again, in that same role of preparing to be wives and wanting to even go on dates, because right now they're not even dating just because of just so many things happening in the world today and them not feeling like they can have an opportunity to essentially be chose. So one of the things that I share with them is I highly recommend, again, I talked about the community, I talked about the therapy, I talked about a little bit about the spiritual walk, But that spiritual walk and your purpose are very big things for marriage. And the reason I share this is because there are going to be times and days where you just don't feel like it, where you don't want to, where you don't, maybe you don't think it's required of you. And you're going to have to die to yourself every day. And when you're single, it is hard. Like you don't have to think about doing that, right? Because you're used to just doing what you want, when you want, however you want. But now you're entering relation with someone and you can't just do whatever you want when you want and how you want. And you're going to have to change in a way that you've never changed in your life. And of course, if you're someone who maybe you haven't been in relationship with someone in a long time, maybe you're so used to kind of your own style of things, and now you're in your late 20s, early 30s, you've been doing things your way as far as relationally, for 20, 30 plus years. And someone's now coming in and saying, okay, I'm ready to, court you, but you're not ready to receive it because you're not open. So I think it's important to have those channels, have them open and really focus on the light and love, because at the end of the day, your spouse is going to help you get closer to, or get more in alignment with God. That's the reflection. That's the piece that a lot of people just don't talk about, is this person is guiding you to be a better version of yourself every single day, regardless if you want to or not. And if you're not someone who, doesn't like accountability, if you don't want someone to mirror back to you what you're doing and sharing with you what they recommend that you do to get better in this area, and you don't like growth, it will be hard for you. So if you can even maybe pick up some activities that honor that. Maybe you pick up a hobby where you have a coach again that is steering you in that direction of helping you get better. Because those types of people, those types of accountability partners, they honestly help you in relation when you're now with your spouse, because now you are trained to have someone in your corner helping you move and get better based on what your goals are. And that's all your spouse wants to do, is just to see you better, than where you were yesterday or where you were the day before. And they want to see those improvements in you. And they do understand. I mean, a lot of men understand that most women are very emotionally immature. Even for me, I was very emotionally immature. And, my husband understood that, but he was patient with me and he allowed me to grow in certain areas. And I was also open to wanting to grow to receive that information. So again, if you know that you're emotionally immature and you're also closed, it just won't work. So do what you need to do to have that spiritual muscle, to incorporate that in your walk, but also to make sure that you have those accountability partners to help align with where you're going. So when you are in that relationship, you're just better because you started from alignment and not out of scarcity or a closed off mind, or not putting yourself in position to be able to receive.
That's good stuff. I'm hearing so much on the internet about women and correction. So this is an interesting concept because what you were saying in terms of, your husband will bring up things that you need help with, and the whole thing about being emotionally immature. That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen when there is a need for correction, right? That's the word I'll use that I've been hearing. And we hear words and they trigger something. There's nothing wrong with the word correction or being corrected. It just means being shown how to do something the right way, in a correct way. However, if we are not emotionally mature to understand that it's okay and that it's for our personal growth, then we will have some pushback. And that comes, like you said, with doing the work before getting married. You don't practice that. I mean, we're always going to be growing and we're always going to be faced with growth opportunities. But there are some things you want to have a good habit of being and having that way of thinking, so that even though you're growing, you're not starting from ground zero and you're not starting with automatic pushback because you hear certain words. So I'm glad you're bringing that out because that is definitely an area of growth to establish yourself to a point where you have some emotional maturity because I hear it a lot. Being a relationship coach, I'll put it this way, I hear it enough. You can hear it in the way people respond to each other when they're just trying to communicate a thought. Okay. And we talk about not using accusatory language. And that's usually what it is. It's usually a correction of an action. But anyway, we won't get into that too much, right? Okay. So, how important is it for wives to keep their appearance up after they get married? Not just, hey, I'm married now. I can let myself go. I got him now.
Okay. So I love this question too, because like I said, I am not perfect. So I know when, again, you have him and you're like, ooh, okay, I have him. So I am going to lay around in my pajamas. I work from home, so I am not going anywhere, right? I can have my bonnet on. I can not do anything with my hair. I can not really wear any clothes or put anything on. Like, I've done all of that. And one thing about men are they're visual creatures, okay? They're visual people. And they will tell you what they like and they're very simple too. They'll tell you what they like and what they don't like. And for me, everybody's household is different, but in our household, one of the things that my husband does is he'll tell me, he'll be like, you know, I've seen that way too many times. Like, I think it's time for you to upgrade that. I think, and he'll say it in a fun, playful way, but I also understand that he's like, you need to go get some new clothes. And I'm like, okay. Right. So he may even give me like a budget or whatever. Right. And he'll be like, hey, go ahead and buy something new, whatever, whatever. And I'll do it. And I'm happy about it. I'm excited. I can't wait to do it. But there was a time where I wasn't doing those things. And if he hadn't communicated with me that he didn't like that, then I probably would have kept doing it. And then maybe, I don't know, I know in some women's cases, this is where the communication gets really quiet. Because if your spouse isn't communicating with you about something that is bothering them, or they are communicating with you about something and you're not actively trying to address it to get to a better conclusion of how you both want this to be in the future, then those little things become big things. And over time, you try to figure out, like, okay, why are we just going our separate ways? Well, you probably were always going your separate ways. They were little. And those little things became now big mountains. So I'm sharing this because if your spouse is sharing with you, hey, I don't like this, change it. If you still want to continue to go in the same direction, change it. And I had to understand that. And I'm like, okay, cool. So, now I've realized that it's not just about honestly getting dressed for him. It's also just getting dressed for me because when I look good, I feel good. I move differently. I show up differently. And again, you're always in your pajamas, again, especially the ladies who work from home, if you're always in your pajamas, maybe you're slouching on the weekends and you decide, I'm just going to wear my pajamas all day, whatever it is. Maybe you are not focusing on hair care or skin care or teeth or whatever it is, over time, it will not just show up in your look, but it will also show up in your actions, how you handle yourself in the home, how you handle yourself outside of the home. It doesn't leave, it follows you. So if you understand that whatever you do once can follow you through all areas of your life, you just treat it differently. And that really was a wake up call for me. Once I realized that, I said, no, I want to do this for me because it shows me that I'm prioritizing me. And once you prioritize yourself, you can give the space and have space to open up to share the overflow with others. But if you're not even giving to yourself first, just the bare minimum of just taking care of your skin, putting on some shea butter, whatever it is, then how are you going to show up for other people with overflow? You're not. You're going to show up for them with scarcity, with closedness. you're gonna show up in a way that, retracts the very thing that you're trying to attract.
When you said something about your husband would say, "You've worn that enough," or whatever, I've heard that. I've heard that from my husband. He said, don't you want another color of boots?" You know, something. Now let me tell you, my teenage son, well, one of them, he shows no mercy. Well, he does in a way. He'll look at something, and I already know what this means. He said, that's your favorite dress, isn't it?" And that is his nice way of saying, "You wear that dress way too much." At first, I didn't catch that. I was like, "Yeah, right, it is." Then he said it again. Another day I had it on. He was like, "Yeah, that's your favorite dress, isn't it?"
Mine is a
You know
cardigan.
what?
I have this brown cardigan that I absolutely love, and no one else in the house loves it. They actually all hate it. But I get cold so easily, so I love having something I can throw on, and they're like, "Yeah, we understand that, but why don't you get more of them?"
Well, let me tell you, if you ever hear that, that's your favorite such and such, you know what that means. That's a respectful way of saying you wear that a whole lot. We Okay, Viera, what does it mean to show up for yourself and your husband?
What does it mean to show up for yourself and your husband? So, oof, the biggest thing here for showing up for you is, and I actually learned this through therapy, and it really was eye-opening for me. But I remember after there was a time in my life where, I think this was like after my miscarriage, I didn't really, I was a little, I don't want to say loopy, that's not the word, but I felt like I was just kind of on a cloud. And I didn't really know how to move. I wasn't sure, how I honestly should show up for me, how I should show up for the people around me, and I was just a bit meh. So, when I was in therapy, one of the things that my therapist recommended that I do is start writing down all of the things that I would love to do that I've never done before, just to get some excitement back into my life. And this can, obviously don't need to be going through something extreme like that to do this homework. But if you find that you are just kind of going through the motions in your life and you are not taking any measures to do something differently or to be adventurous, or you find yourself just a bit just bored of just kind of where you are in life right now, I highly recommend doing this exercise. And what this allowed me to do was I would go and I would just surf the web and I would just write down like, I would love to do this. I would love to do that. And they don't have they can be simple things. I had on my list like I wanted to like take self-defense classes. I wanted to learn yoga. I wanted to learn how to swim. I wanted to learn how to shoot. I wanted to just kind of learn all these different things. And then once I wrote down all the things that I wanted to learn, or I was excited about learning a different language, whatever it was, I picked 3 things that I wanted to learn and do that quarter. And if I found that I really enjoyed it, I would keep up with it. If not, then I would, toss that one and go to the next thing that I wrote on my list. And by me doing that, it allowed me to just get excited, just reignite it with some of the things that I really enjoy just within life. It was exciting, it was adventurous. And at this time, the 3 things that I picked up at that moment were I actually started yoga. I also went into learning more about just health in general. So I started taking some like holistic health classes and learning more about the body and the skin and how, the body works, things like that. And then the third thing that I did was I started learning more about the muscles. So, like, when it comes to emotions, so like muscle testing and learning more about how your emotions play a big part on like what you eat and things of that nature. And those were my 3 things at that time. So I was like, okay. From there was a yoga studio right down the street. So I would walk there and I started just taking a couple of classes and I was like, oh, this is fun. And I started exploring and I started doing different types of yoga. And then I would say maybe 3 months in, the yoga and the owner of the studio, she saw that I was there so much that she said, hey, would you like to be part of our yoga teacher training? And I was like, sure. Okay. I would love to just learn more about yoga. Again, not really knowing where it would go, but I became a certified yoga teacher and had no intention of doing that previously. But it was something fun. And what it did was it got me excited. It allowed me to move my body in a way that I hadn't before. It honestly re-prepared my body for pregnancy again when I decide, when we decided to go down that route. It opened up another community for me, and it also provided me a safe place where I could just show up in a different way. And all of those things together worked for my good. And by me doing that, again, I showed up for myself in a different way. And then I was able to bring that into what? My household. So now everyone in the house does yoga. Every time there's some type of tension or anything like that happening, they know exactly what they need to do. They learn, they know different breathing techniques because these are the things that I learned in yoga. Sometimes we'll practice, like the girls and I will do handstands to see who can, do the longest handstand, just again, making it fun. And it just became something that we just do, but also a great way to regulate our emotions, which was something that I was battling with through the miscarriage, was trying to regulate my emotions. So again, it didn't just help me, but it also helped the household as well. So I share that because, even for example, with my husband, I think it's important that even when he's with the girls, for example, and maybe they're just not emotionally regulated, he can go back and say, practice your breathing. Just as simple as that. Maybe for him, if he finds that he's stressed about something, he can go outside and practice his breathing. So again, it just, by me channeling that and learning it for myself, I was able to now open it up to others and allow those processes and what I learned to help them in their journeys as well.
That's a great example of showing up for yourself and how that, like you said, the overflow affects your family in positive ways. Yeah, that's good stuff. I remember a few years ago we had just gotten back from a trip. We lived in our RV for 2 years and we just drove all around the country visiting different states, and we came back and we kind of settled back in. And I think I was in a meh place too because we had done all this traveling and now we're back and trying to figure some things out and readjust. And one of the things I did, I learned how to crochet. And so we have been in New Mexico for about 6 months, and my children were taking up crochet and knitting, and they were really young back then. And so I didn't do it. And we came back, they had all this yarn and they were saying, how they were still talking about how much they loved it. And so I watched videos and I went to a couple of library classes where they were offering it. And I took up crochet and I really liked it. It was a great stress relief. I mean, just to sit and be calm and move my hands, all of those things were such a positive experience. And once the fall came, when you looked around my house, everybody had a blanket. I felt like Oprah. You get a blanket head, you get a blanket head, you get a blanket. Anytime somebody had a baby, I was crocheting blankets, right? It was like, so yeah, but taking up that one habit that was very helpful and that I love to do, it stretched out to the people around me. Like I said, everybody had blankets and we all have nice little throws, and it was something that was just me that I did by myself. Nobody in the house was doing it with me, and sometimes I left the house and I would take my bag and go to the library and just sit and just show up for myself with my crochet hooks and my yarn. And yes, when you do that, you really do show up for the people that you love. Like they say, it's a cliche, but it's so true. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And if we can really learn that, my gosh. I have a saying I tell the children, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Mm.
And so how you show up in this area, it's going to affect all the other areas, no matter how small or how large. Okay. What are 3 takeaway points you can leave for our audience today, Viair?
Well, yes, three takeaways. So number one is everything starts with you. So knowing that, again, if you're feeling like you're not necessarily in a position where you really care about what's happening in your life right now, maybe again, you're in your meh stage and you're trying to figure it out, find some things, do something different to get you excited to reignite what that looks like back in your life. Number two is having that spiritual muscle that's going to be very important through your journey, not just again with yourself, but as you start having this overflow and being able to be connected with other people. You're going to have a lot of personalities that you're going to be dealing with that are different from yours. And learning how to die from yourself every single day is not easy. So having that spiritual alignment is going to be very important. And then lastly, the upkeep. Not just with the upkeep as far as picking a new skill or a new hobby that you want to learn, but the upkeep within yourself as far as what type of nutrients are you putting inside of your body? Because whatever you do internally, it exposes whatever that looks like externally, right? So if you notice, okay, well, I'm putting a lot of junk in my body, it's going to show up on your face. You're going to have acne. You're going to have dull skin. It's just what it is because of what you're doing internally. So the more that you can feed yourself internally, the better you'll be for the people that you love or the people that you're preparing to love in the future, if you're not currently dating right now. So those were the three things that I recommend.
And there was a question I I need to go back to. What are some of the repercussions when we don't show up as the best version for ourselves and for our husbands?
Oh, this is a really good one. You no longer have them.
Okay.
That's a big one, and this can look different, right? So one thing that, again, this was for our relationship and it was required, it was needed. So we found ourselves in this very mediocre state, right? It was like we had learned all the things about each other at this point, and we were just in this routine that either one of us could really get out of in order to get to the next level. So we decided that we were separating. And when I say separating, I mean, I actually have a family home in Georgia, so I spent a couple months there and, he obviously is here in Florida where we live. And we use that time to get to know ourselves. We use that time to be more in alignment with God. We use that time to work on whatever businesses or things that we wanted to co create together. And it forced us to do what we needed to do in that period of time so we could come back stronger. So I share that because sometimes when you don't do what you're supposed to do the first time, the consequence is you not having what you want in the future. And for me, I understood, okay, if I don't get this right, it won't be just a little 3-month thing. It will be a lot longer because absolutely need this to happen in order for us to move forward. And just also remembering too that it's not about you. It was never about you. It's about your gifts, his gifts, what you all come together to give, and how other people are going to be blessed because you all decided to put those insecurities, put that scarcity mindset, put all of those things to the side for the betterment of society. So if you have to, I'm not saying you have to go through those extreme measures, but that's what we had to do to reignite the flame that we needed to move forward. And, for some households, it might end up being a situation where I hear a lot of women talk about, oh, my husband was cheating, or my husband doesn't talk to me, or he doesn't communicate with me, or he doesn't do the things that he used to do. And a lot of that is because what led up to that? I'm not saying that, whatever he did, he wasn't wrong for doing those things. But what part did you play in that? Did he have to continue to repeat himself day after day, week after week, year after year? Right? Maybe you had a baby 3 years ago and you still have the baby weight. And he's been asking you to get in the gym for the last 3 years and you still look like you're pregnant. That's a concern. But if you all were to separate right now, I bet you have to go get back in shape real quick to find somebody else. So again, instead of doing that, having to stoop that low to get it out of you, like, how can you work on that within your relationship so it doesn't have to get to that point? And then again, if you don't know what to do, ask. Hey, I'm noticing this is actually taking me a lot longer. I'm in the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week and I'm still not able to get it off. Okay, maybe it's time for you to get a trainer. Maybe it's time for you to take some other serious measures, but you have to be able to communicate what your needs are as well because he can't read your mind. But you both know that you all have a goal. And in order to hit this goal, you both have to be operating at 100%. So that's what I would say to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, we're not advocating you leave your spouse. Do what you
No,
need to do for
no,
your own house.
yes,
And I know you
everyone's
said that.
household is different,
I'm just
but
saying it again. Well, we listened to before you do. And she said, no, that's not what she said. She said that's what she did. Okay. So if someone wants to connect with you, how may they do so? And I'm going to put this in the description as well.
yeah, absolutely. So if anyone wants to connect with me further, whether again you have your own voice that you're trying to put out there, or you just want to learn more about the Holistic Sister Circle and how you can be a part of it as you create your own community, you can reach out to me. I am through Instagram. My name is Viair Myles on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, same Viair Myles. And then you can also find any of my work on the socials as well. So whether it's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, again, the Holistic Sister Circle, you'll be able to connect with us there too.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here again. All right. Thank you for coming back. You're not
Yes.
a visitor anymore. You are a friend of the podcast. Okay.
Yay! I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for
Yes.
having me
Yes.
too, Verlin. This was fun.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for listening and tuning in. Be sure to visit my website at verlintarleton.com. There you have your freebies you can download as well as your couples vision board template. And stay tuned because I have some things in the works and I got some courses coming up and they're going to knock your socks off. If there's one thing I know how to do, and that is how to get a good man. And I'm going to show you how to in these courses coming up. Get ready. All right. Until the next time, may you experience extraordinary love. Bye for now.